The last installment of our Woman History Month series, we're joined by Jessica Tan, Director of Development for MURAL Real Estate Partners. Welcome, Jessica. Thank you for accepting the invitation.
Of course, thank you so much for having me.
Jessica, I would like to start with our guests talking about their career arc. Where did you start? What made you decide work in development? Could you please elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, I kind of just fell into it very fortuitously. So I studied a Bachelor of Commerce and a Bachelor of Property Construction in my hometown of Melbourne, Australia. And then when I was 18, I think I was barely 18, I fell into a development project management consulting company. And there I started my career and worked across, many different types of real estate projects, predominantly residential, but also a lot of retail, commercial office, healthcare, etc. So I worked in that development project management company for about 10 years. And in that process, had the opportunity, it was a small privately owned business, so I had the opportunity to actually move to Sydney and open an office for them in Sydney. The company is called PDS Group. And so I was first on the ground in Sydney. We didn't have any projects, so I was very much pounding the pavements. And then over the course of about 4-5 years, helped grow the team to about 13 people. And was working across a number of different projects, again, consulting institutional clients, public clients, private clients, and a whole bunch of different mixed use projects. From there, I decided that it was probably good for me to stop being my own boss for a little bit, and learn what it was like to be in a big corporate business. And a publicly listed business. So I went to work for quite a large Australian retail REIT called Vicinity Centres, and they own the largest shopping malls in the Southern Hemisphere. And there I learnt about very much how corporate works and all the different structures and the hierarchy and the processes. And I got the opportunity to work on some really, really big retail projects and retail mixed-use projects. Taking large areas of existing shopping centres, identifying and planning what they could be into the future, and then moving through very, complex and lengthy entitlement processes to come up with mixed-use plans. So that's sort of my background, and I think from having corporate experience and also sort of private business experience, I have very much landed that the sort of the entrepreneurial spirit very much more suits my personality, and I feel like it's where I can contribute the most value. So joining Cedar and then joining Mural Real Estate Partners has been a really natural transition.
But you moved to New York right in the middle of the pandemic in 2021. How was that professionally and personally?
Yeah, actually, I was incredibly lucky because I wouldn't call it the middle of the pandemic. I think that you guys probably bore the brunt of most of it in 2020. And then so I moved in March of 2021, so about a year ago. And in sort of April, May of 2021, Australia went into a very deep lockdown. But I was already in New York, and everything in New York was open and vibrant. So I'm probably the luckiest person there is when it comes to COVID, because I've never really experienced lockdown. Actually, I haven't ever experienced lockdown. I've always been free and able to move around. So very fortunate and incredibly grateful because of that. Professionally, it was a bit strange to have 5 virtual interviews, starting with Robin Ziegler, our current CEO and founder of Mural, but then COO of Cedar Realty Trust, and have 5 virtual interviews, and then wake up a month later and have a job offer to come to New York, and then a month after that have packed up everything, sold my life, and to move here. So it's been very exciting, has been challenging at times, but overall has been such a rewarding experience.
What would you say are the differences, if there are any, between the industry in Australia and in the US?
Yeah, sure. I think that I've always been quite a direct person. So the American way of business, in terms of being direct, that hasn't come as a shock to me. And a lot of people mention that when they talk about moving to the US or moving to New York. Um, I think that there are just endless opportunities here because the economy is so much larger than the Australian New Zealand economy. And so there is just ample opportunity. And, you know, every day I meet someone different who is making something out of nothing. So in that sense, it truly is like the land of opportunity. I think for the type of work that I do and that you know Mural is engaging in, there's significant opportunity here in the States because of how complex the communities are, how complex the cultural history has been, and of course politically, you know, how conflicting that can be. Which is very different from in Australia, given it's a smaller place, it's a younger country, we have fewer historical challenges, although obviously our relationship with our Indigenous population could always improve.
Fascinating. And what do you prefer, Sydney or New York?
I fortunately get the best of both worlds. I miss the ocean because I used to ocean swim, and I miss the, I guess, 70 and sunny all the time. But no, New York has been a dream. To live and work in New York has been a dream for pretty much all my life. So to be here is really like some days I just still pinch myself because it's just so much energy and so much vibrancy, and the connectivity to the world as well is really impressive. Like to be able to jump on a plane and be in Paris in 6-7 hours, or be in Copenhagen, you can't do that when you live in Australia. And anywhere you go is a minimum of 8 to 26 hours.
Would you care explaining to our audience, I know some of them are familiar, with the nuances of the mixed-use revitalization approach locally, which stands for MURAL?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to have joined Mural, and to be, one of the sort of the founding members with Robin. It's such a huge privilege. So yes, Mural does stand for Mixed Use Revitalization Approach Locally, and our vision is to really develop communities and places that are unique to a specific location, and in doing so, not only engaging the local culture and the character of the places, but also using development as a tool for inclusion, for economic growth, and opportunity for the communities that we are seeking to dive into. I think that, and Vinay and Fede know this because we worked together designing a building most recently, but I personally, and I think we as Mural, like we understand that when we design and build a building or a series of buildings, it's there for like 50 plus years. Hopefully it's there for longer, for 100 years. So I think that it's really important that we consider all aspects of the environment, the community, how the uses might change in the community and for those buildings. And then also, at the end of the day, it will get demolished. And so what do those materials do to the environment? And whilst we sometimes work on these projects and it takes so many years for them to come to fruition, it's actually such a short period of time for us to be making really influential decisions. And really, it's a very actually small window, whether it's 18 months or 2 years, to make decisions about something that's going to be there for, a generation or, definitely decades. So definitely at Mural, we harness that responsibility. And I think, being a minority-led business, it's a powerful vehicle for transformation, we hope.
How do you help balance the interests of the different stakeholders in this short period of time where you have to make these critical decisions? And what tools do you have to do so?
Yeah, sure. So I'll be very honest. I'm obviously still new in my journey with stakeholders in the US and understanding all the cultural nuances. But I think that one perspective that I do have is that I know my limitations, and I know my weaknesses, or the areas where I will have blind spots. And that's where, my colleagues, and in particular, my colleague, Vanessa Rodriguez, she is a communication and marketing force and a cultural placemaker. And with her experience, we need to draft very detailed community engagement plans. And I think that with a plan and with a very structured way of approaching who our audience is, how we will engage with them, and in what timeframes, it helps someone like me anyway, who can be very focused on just very specific development or design or construction items to hold at the appropriate points and make sure that we are engaging with the community. And I think, and Vanessa shared with me some research recently, which she'd been doing about, you know, through COVID and post-COVID, what keeps communities together. And it's really those communities where people have the strongest attachment and they really feel like they belong and they're responsible. Those communities are the ones that will thrive and have endurance moving forward. And I think that, you know, we very much want to support that and be part of that picture of fostering that attachment. But yes, it is challenging given all of the demands, you know, development throws at you, and financial partners wanting returns in certain periods of time, and you know, authorities here and there. So I very much lean on and collaborate with my team to make sure we do engage appropriately.
Excellent. What is the outlook of real estate development currently? We'll see more emphasis on resilience, mixed-use development, a community approach like yours. What will we see?
Yeah, sure. Wow, I don't profess to, you know much about the whole industry, but my personal view is that, you know, real estate is a fundamental investment block. It's a fundamental piece of our lives because we all need shelter, whether that be our homes or where we work or, you know, places we go to. And I think that fundamental of, like, we're human, we need shelter, we have specific needs. It will continue into the future, even as all of us have avatars and, you know, we live virtual lives and what have you. And then I think what I had sort of mentioned before about, and to your point about resilience and mixed use buildings, and to my point before when I mentioned buildings are there for 50 plus years, 50 to 100 years, that consideration of, yes, our buildings should be more resilient, they should be built to last and withstand time and withstand change. I think that, and also be flexible around, well, if there's another pandemic or if there is, you know, other social unrest or what have you, how those communities and those environments might support the people who live in them, should become more of a focus. And I hope it does become more of a focus.
I was doing some numbers before the interview, some research. I found out that while most of realtors are women, 65% of women are realtors, sorry, 65% of realtors are women, the industry, it's still really men dominated, and only 25% of women membership in real estate and land use organizations, and only 60% of the CEOs of the top 100 companies are women. How important it is to you to work for a woman-owned firm and for a person with the portfolio and experience of Mrs. Ziegler?
Yeah, sure. Well, to be honest, I didn't set out to look for a woman, to work for a woman-owned firm. You know, Robin interviewed me to join Cedar to work on and to focus on a whole mixed-use portfolio at Cedar Realty Trust. And that is how I started working with Robin. I was incredibly impressed, obviously, when I first met her and interviewed with her the first time. There hadn't been anyone who'd been so inquisitive and actually had read my CV in such detail that she could ask me questions that really had to make me think. But it was really engaging and I was super impressed. So naturally, as when she asked me to, you know, join MURAL, I just jumped at the chance because she's definitely someone who, you know, if you've met her or you've spent any time with Robin, she's like a force to be reckoned with. She's incredibly intelligent, but also incredibly empathetic and approachable. And so I learned so much from her on a day-to-day basis. And she really empowers our team. She holds the door open, pushes us through, and then there's really no limit to how far you want to go. She will help you in any way possible. But she just makes space for that, and she gives us a seat at the table. You know, she asks us questions about Mural as a business, and sometimes I'm like, thanks so much for asking us. You don't have to ask us. But you know, she's really inclusive with our ideas and how we shape and form, you know, some of the business strategy fundamentally. So that is such an honor to be part of. So that's sort of, I guess, my journey with Miss Eagle. But I think actually, if I look back on my career, surprisingly, and I've now spent, you know, over a decade, nearly decade and a half working in real estate. And yes, I've worked with a lot of men, but I've actually also been in some all-female teams, which, like, you know, ranging from like design to construction to the investment team, like all being female. So perhaps I've had a very unique experience, but I think that, you know, women definitely have a lot to offer. There might be like a different tenacity, flexibility that, you know, comes with having, you know, being really in touch with our emotions, that might make it different for us to work together.
Let's go back to what you say about building communities and this sense of identity. How important it is to have a diverse team when you're trying to achieve this and connect with the stakeholders?
Yeah, I think entirely. It's very interesting. So now at Mural, we are actually all female, but it's not by purpose or design. I think that, you know, Robin has selected each one of us: property management operations, branding, placemaking, communications, myself in development, all because of, I guess, who we are as people and as individuals. And we are very diverse. We come from different backgrounds, different cultural backgrounds, and therefore bring, I guess, different views and different opinions. And I think, I guess, part of being inclusive is also putting up our hands and saying, well, actually, we don't understand that element of that community, but we're going to learn about it, because it's I cannot sit here and tell you that I understand a Cuban community. You know, I can probably speak about an Asian community, but you know, it would be anecdotal. And I think even in that, there's so many nuances that, you know, it's important to sort of go, pause. I don't know about this, so I'm going to ask, and I'm going to learn about, you know, what makes them tick and what's really important to that specific group of people.
That's something really interesting we have heard of in different interviews during the talks, is that sometimes we take this diversity within the checkbox, right? And you're saying you may understand an Asian community better, but not necessarily, because not all communities are the same. So it's always important to have that in mind.
Yeah, definitely.
Jessica, I'm going to open the floor because I know Fede and Vinay are eager to ask you some questions.
Don't ask me difficult questions, guys.
Team, go ahead. Floor is yours.
I'll let Fede go first.
You're on mute, Fede. Oh yeah, no, you're not.
How do you think your transition from Cedar? I mean, do you think Cedar and Mural are fundamentally two different companies? How do you think your transition is, and what's the main difference that you think Mural can bring to the real estate environment?
Yeah, sure. So yes, they're very, very different businesses because we're not a REIT. And, you know, it's a different leadership, if you will, in the sense that Cedar Realty Trust obviously has a CEO, CFO. Mural Real Estate Partners is a privately owned business and owned by Robin. So I think that, like, fundamentally the decision making is slightly different, or definitely has a different vision, and we don't have, I guess, public shareholders like Cedar had public shareholders. We are free to focus on those developments and those assets where we see opportunity. They don't necessarily have to be retail assets, but of course that's where we, you know, have our strengths. Whereas with Cedar, of course, it's a retail REIT, so there's specific structural things that are in place. So from that perspective, I think it is very different. In terms of my transition, it has been, interesting, but also I almost feel like it's a very different type of work, because being in a small business, every day, each one of us wears multiple hats, whether it's literally like, whether that's like, okay, someone needs to go to the office to pick up some package and make sure that it's not lost somewhere, or Jess, please make sure that the TV is working, or, it's very simple things, to actually, we need to talk to our investment bankers about, financing the platform or the projects or what have you. And then there's a lot of like business development about going out there, making sure that our brand and our company is known, that we're looking at new opportunities so we can find those opportunities that really, really fit our vision. So it is very, I find that my day-to-day is very different to, I guess, perhaps more operative business elements, and rolling projects where you have like weekly meetings, and it's a bit more of a structure, if you will.
You mentioned wearing different hats. I saw some nods, because at Moya it's something we often do. Vinay, do you have a question?
So, Jessica, you mentioned, I know you and I have talked a little bit about it at various times. Culturally, the profession is very different here, right? And I think in your case, you sort of go between the office part and also the construction part, which is being out on construction sites. So, one, I had two questions. So what do you think are the biggest sort of cultural differences between how sort of things are done in Australia versus here, in the construction field, right?
Mm-hmm.
And two, also, how do you feel about baseball versus cricket? You can go either way, whichever one you want.
I might go in reverse. So cricket
Okay.
is the sport of sunburn. I don't spend too much time watching it because I find it a little bit boring, although it is culturally obviously very Australian, as it is, in other parts of the world as well. I've only been to one baseball game at Yankee Stadium. I found it very entertaining, but I don't know anything about the sport, unfortunately. I'm happy to learn more. And then to your question about, yes, we have talked about this. So I think that the industry here is obviously very big, but it's obviously very big. There are many players. I think, and I've learned now that probably because of the authority structure and the way that some regulatory requirements are in place, that some of the processes in procurement seem just a bit more dated to me and more traditional, whereas in Australia we have many like fast track sort of procurement mechanisms, design and construct, where you let the project at only 40% design development, and you actually complete the design as you build. And the subcontractor market is heavily involved in that design process. And I think, so it's different from that context, but it's incredibly similar in terms of the development process. And I think I've surprised myself in saying, oh, actually, a lot of the processes and the questions that you ask is the same in any development process. You need to be aware of, obviously, local authorities, local nuances, ground conditions, who the contractors are, what the contracting market is like in that city or town, what the supply chain is like. So all of those elements, I think, very similar process of vetting. And then, being able to build up, okay, these are the 5 contractors that we have a strong relationship with in this city, or these are the architects that we like to work with, like Moya, who we know can sort of come in and deliver. So I think there's those aspects of development which I have found to be incredibly transferable, and so have given me a bit of confidence actually in immersing myself into this new market.
Yeah, I just want to add very quickly for the record, since this is being taped, that cricket is much harder than baseball, because in cricket you have to wait for the ball to bounce and then hit it, right? It's much harder to do that than to hit a ball that doesn't bounce.
Fair enough.
Jessica, thank you so much for joining us today. What a wonderful opportunity for you to be here. One of the core values that I see on MURAL is to impact communities, to really make a difference. Where do you see the need is? And do you think that we are improving more into being inclusive in the communities that need the most? But we have so many around the world and of course United States. But how do you guys see yourselves in that market?
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much, Paola, for having me. That's a very, very good question. I think that it comes from the vision focus that we have as a team, obviously led by Robin. I think it has been interesting as we go through some opportunities that have landed on our doorstep to say which ones are more mural and which ones are less mural. And I think there has been a conscious decision to choose those that are going to have more impact. They are very hairy and very complicated at times, but also just completely aligned with our purpose and vision. And we feel it. We very much feel it, I think, when we get excited about a certain project and the opportunity that it presents. I'm not sure if I'm answering your question entirely, but I think that it's with that focus and that intent on continuing to choose projects or continuing to invest into areas where we know there's opportunity zone funds, there's a requirement for increased affordable housing in those demographic areas that really do need growth and support. I think having that focus and having that intention is how we will end up in delivering what our mission is as a business.
Love it. Thank you, Jessica.
Jessica, thank you very much for this wonderful interview. I hope you had a good time.
Thank you so much, guys. Lovely to see you all.
Thank you to everyone for another edition of MOYATalks. I'll see you next week with another series.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye bye.